3,000 years of raids, flags, and blood. Over 40 distinct pirate eras, dozens of legendary tactics, and routes that shaped the entire world economy. We're covering every major shift in piracy, from the very first recorded sea raiders in 1400 BC, all the way to the drone-spotted skiffs off the Horn of Africa in 2024. Using AI-reconstructed imagery, we'll show you what these ships, weapons, and men actually looked like. Stay until the end, because the last era might surprise you more than any of the ancient ones. Around 1400 BC, the Mediterranean wasn't a trade route. It was a hunting ground. A confederation of raiders the Egyptians called the Sea Peoples launched coordinated attacks across Cyprus, Canaan, and the Nile Delta, striking from shallow draft vessels fast enough to outrun anything Egypt had. They didn't plunder randomly. They targeted grain ships moving between ports, intercepting supply chains with military precision. Pharaoh Rameses III finally stopped them in 1175 BC at the Battle of the Delta, the first recorded naval defense against piracy in history. But the tactic they pioneered, fast ships, coordinated strikes, coastal retreats, never died. It just moved west. By 100 BC, the Mediterranean had a new problem. Cilician pirates operating out of the rocky southern coast of modern Turkey had built something unprecedented, a pirate network. They controlled over 1,000 ships, operated in organized fleets, and held entire islands as resupply bases. They didn't just raid, they kidnapped. Ransom became a business model. Julius Caesar himself was captured by Cilicians in 75 BC, held for 38 days, and allegedly told his captors they were asking too little for him. After his release, he returned with a fleet, captured them all, and crucified every single one. The Cilicians were eventually crushed by Pompey the Great in 67 BC, who cleared the entire Mediterranean in just 89 days, using a strategy no one had tried before: simultaneous multi-front naval sweeps. The sea was quiet. For about a century, the Viking Age beginning around 793 AD redefined piracy entirely. These weren't opportunistic raiders. They were amphibious military forces. The longship, shallow enough to sail up rivers, fast enough to outrun warships, light enough to be carried overland, gave the Norse a tactical advantage no Mediterranean culture had ever seen. They didn't just hit coastlines. They penetrated hundreds of miles inland, sacking Paris in 845 AD by sailing directly up the Seine. Their routes weren't random either. They mapped prevailing winds and currents across the North Atlantic with no instruments, navigating to Iceland, Greenland, and North America purely through environmental reading. The Viking raids lasted nearly 3 centuries and directly shaped the political geography of England, France, Russia, and Ireland. Then came the era that most people picture when they think of pirates, but almost never get right. The golden age of piracy ran roughly from 1650 to 1730, and it didn't happen because sailors were greedy. It happened because governments created it. European powers used private raiders called privateers throughout the 1600s. Legal pirates, essentially, licensed to attack enemy ships during wartime. When the wars ended, thousands of trained naval men were suddenly unemployed, armed, and experienced. They already knew the trade routes. They already knew the tactics. They just stopped asking permission. The Caribbean became the center of it all because of geography. Ships carrying silver from South America, sugar from the West Indies, and spice from the East all funneled through predictable choke points: the Windward Passage, the Florida Straits, the waters around Hispaniola. Pirates didn't need to search, they just waited. Blackbeard, Edward Teach, blockaded the entire port of Charleston, South Carolina in 1718, with just 4 ships holding the city hostage for medical supplies. He didn't fire a single shot. His weapon was psychological. A man with slow-burning fuses braided into his beard, standing in a cloud of smoke on his quarterdeck, daring anyone to approach. He was killed later that year off North Carolina, reportedly taking 5 musket balls and 14 sword cuts before falling. The Navy lieutenant who killed him had Blackbeard's head hung from the bowsprit as proof. Bartholomew Roberts took a different approach. Where Blackbeard ruled by fear, Black Bart ruled by scale. He captured over 400 ships in 4 years, the most prolific pirate in recorded history. He operated across the Atlantic, from Brazil to Newfoundland to West Africa, developing his own code of conduct for his crew, dividing plunder mathematically, and running his operation like a corporation. He was killed in 1722 off Gabon, and within months the Golden Age effectively ended, not because pirates disappeared, but because Britain and the other naval powers finally committed serious warships to hunting them down. The Indian Ocean told a parallel story. While European pirates raided the Atlantic, the Barbary corsairs of North Africa had been operating a sophisticated piracy and slave economy since the 1500s. Based out of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, they raided as far north as Iceland, capturing an estimated 1 million Europeans for slavery between 1530 and 1780. Their ships were fast, lateen-rigged xebecs and galleys built for pursuit in the light Mediterranean winds. They knew the seasonal wind patterns better than any navy trying to stop them. The United States fought 2 wars against them, the First and Second Barbary Wars of 1801 and 1815, the first military conflicts in American history fought on foreign soil. The South China Sea produced something entirely different in the 19th century. Qing Shi, a former sex worker who married a pirate lord and inherited his fleet after his death in 1807, built the largest pirate confederation in history. At its peak, she commanded over 800 vessels and 80 Ziwaizoran men, more ships than most contemporary navies. She enforced strict operational codes, taxed coastal villages systematically, and defeated Chinese imperial fleets, Portuguese warships, and British naval forces repeatedly. She eventually negotiated her own retirement directly with the Chinese government, keeping her wealth and dying peacefully in her 60s running a gambling house. She remains the most successful pirate commander in recorded history by almost every measurable metric. And then the story skips forward, past the age of steam and aircraft carriers, to a coast most people couldn't find on a map in 2005. Somalia. By the mid-2000s, the country had no functioning government, no coast guard, and a fishing industry devastated by illegal foreign trawlers stripping its waters bare. Fishermen with skiffs and AK-47s started boarding those foreign ships in protest. It worked. Within 2 years, what began as vigilante action had industrialized into a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise. The tactics evolved rapidly. Motherships, hijacked cargo vessels, extended operational range hundreds of miles offshore. Boarding ladders, GPS devices, and satellite phones replaced cutlasses and astrolabes. Ransoms were negotiated by phone, transferred by wire, and sometimes airdropped in cash. At the peak in 2011, Somali pirates were holding 758 hostages simultaneously and had collected over $150 million in ransoms in a single year. The international response, combined naval patrols from over 30 nations, armed guards on merchant vessels, onshore military pressure, drove the numbers down sharply by 2013. But the conditions that created it never fully resolved. And there you have it. Over 400 years of maritime predation. From the sea peoples of the Bronze Age to the skiffs of the Indian Ocean. Every era shaped by the same core equation. Valuable routes, weak enforcement, and desperate or opportunistic people willing to take the risk. The ships changed, the weapons changed, the flags changed. The math never did. If you want to go deeper on one of these eras, the video on the complete history of naval warfare is right there. It connects directly to everything you just watched. Thanks for making it to the end.